Obviously, the President of the United States, President Trump, there standing alongside the Prime Minister of Spain, Mariano Rajoy, being asked questions and making some news on a couple of different pertinent issues, including, of course, this back and forth over the NFL and kneeling and patriotism. While we've been listening to that, there's been some serious breaking news with regard to health care and a no-go vote with Republicans coming out of this luncheon. Apparently, the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell just said, there's no point in voting on something that they know that will fail. So we'll get into that. Also, the president there making some news on North Korea, among some other topics. So let me bring my entire panel in. And David Chalian, I'm starting with you, sir, our CNN political director. First, on the NFL, the question, I think, essentially was, why have you been so preoccupied with the NFL? And, comparing that to why the silence until last night on the situation, the dire situation in Puerto Rico. And the president responded, I wasn't preoccupied, but I've been ashamed. So he's still, tripling down on how those players and coaches who've been kneeling, calling it disrespectful again.
Right, although I would note that when he came into the Rose Garden before the event got underway with the bilateral agenda, he made sure to make comments about Puerto Rico. So while when asked about this, he said he wasn't distracted at all and this wasn't a distraction, note what the President of the United States chose to put front and center before things got even started today. It's the thing he knows that there's been some criticism around. Exactly. Yeah. So he got out there and did that, which to me indicates he does know that the NFL sort of distracted from the opportunity of him to sort of lead out in front early on the Puerto Rico issue. To your point, though, he didn't step away at all from his criticism, and you can see how firmly he believes in the position he is holding on this NFL issue. He didn't shy away from saying that or equivocating in any way. He is clearly on one side of this issue, and he asserted the notion that he thinks the NFL should put a rule in place that prevents any kneeling from being allowed during the national anthem.
Telling the story of how he'd recently been to Walter Reed, saw many members, heroes, members of our military, badly wounded, and said, how could you do this? This is so disrespectful. Again, the president's words. Pam Oliver, you're senior correspondent, NFL sideline reporter for Fox Sports. You have been in the thick of this. You have been talking to players. You just heard the president's words. What are you hearing?
Well, let me tell you, the game I worked on Sunday, the Seattle Seahawks were in Tennessee to play the Titans. And before the game, I noticed something very different. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I noticed that players were not really distracted, but they were a little bit annoyed. They were ticked off. They were angry. Their emotions were all over the place. And I felt it was because of the president's comments, and I felt they felt emboldened. When you see no players, coaches, any other personnel on the sideline with the singing of the national anthem taking place and the anthem singer then taking a knee, I think that sort of set this whole thing up to get everybody to understand that this is serious. We are taking this whole thing regarding social injustice, not the flag, not the anthem. A lot of people are sort of missing the point, and no one more than the president.
I think it's noteworthy. Been a fan of yours for a long time, Pam Oliver, and for you to notice this difference in all the 20 years you've been covering football, that says something to me. Go ahead, Gloria.
No, I just wanted to add to what Pam was saying. I spoke with somebody who is a friend of the president's and who has spoken with him within the last couple of days. And he said that the president is happy about all of this because he believes that he has struck a chord in America, that people are rising up because they want to be patriotic about the flag. And as he just said in this presser, he was, quote unquote, ashamed of what he saw taking place at football games. And so the president, tripling down today, as we saw, comes at it from a completely different point of view. And it doesn't sound to me like he will back down or change his mind anytime.
Right. And on Puerto Rico, let me just get over to Jim Acosta, our senior White House correspondent who's standing by. And David appropriately pointed out off the top, it was Puerto Rico that the president mentioned, at the very beginning, because obviously he's been criticized for his silence on the dire situation among, Americans. And it sounds like the president says Puerto Rico is pleased with the job done so far.
That's right, and I should point out we're being asked to leave the Rose Garden here any minute now, Brooke. But yes, you heard the president there during this press conference say that his administration has received what he called tremendous reviews from people on the ground in Puerto Rico. Now, if you go and listen to what some of those local officials have been saying over the last 12 to 24 hours, there have been cries for help. Primarily coming from those officials on the ground in Puerto Rico, not necessarily a whole chorus of tremendous reviews as the president described it here in the Rose Garden. But you heard the president say that he is going to go to Puerto Rico on Tuesday. That is going to be a Herculean effort on the part of his administration to try to pull that off. He also said he would like to go to the Virgin Islands as well. So you heard the president try to make this pivot. Over the last, few days, we've been focusing a whole lot more on the president's views on the NFL and players who kneel during the national anthem. When it comes to what the president is saying here at the White House, not so much in terms of his focus on Puerto Rico. You can look at just the number of tweets that he's issued since Friday night, some 24 or so tweets on the NFL and the players and on these sports issues and patriotism issues. Only about 4 or so on Puerto Rico. So it's not surprising to hear the president say, I'm not preoccupied with the NFL. I am focused on Puerto Rico. But at the same time, no question about it, there are going to be some eyes on this president when he's on the ground in Puerto Rico, watching and studying his actions down there, because there has been some criticism that he hasn't paid enough attention to what's going on down there.
Indeed. Jim Acosta, thank you. We'll let you hop out of the Rose Garden there. Okay. Let's go now to health care. As we were all listening to that, the news was crossing that the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell told Republican lawmakers in this luncheon that the Graham-Cassidy legislation is a no-go. They just simply didn't have enough votes. So why enough yeses? So why bring it to a vote? David Chalian. So try again, fail. Is it tax reform time? Well, what's your assessment of all this?
Well, the clock is certainly running out here on being able to try to do repeal and replace of Obamacare with just 50 votes. That's been the whole reason that you've seen this last-ditch effort, is because of this upcoming deadline on Saturday. This now is just going to remain an albatross around Republicans, because it is a core promise that they haven't delivered on, and yet every attempt that they have to deliver on it has not been popular with the American people, which is why they haven't been able to deliver on it. So it's this constant conundrum that they've been in on health care, Brooke, and what is so interesting in this moment of Mitch McConnell deciding we're not even going to show people that we don't have the votes. We don't want to go through that embarrassment on the floor again. Some folks inside the conference initially, before the lunch today, were thinking, no, we got to show that we're trying. But there was, according to our reporting from Manu Raju and Dana Bash and others, that there was a consensus in the room that it was better for the conference if they did not have this vote, did not show this failure publicly on the floor.
Right. I think the irony is that Republicans blame the Republicans in the Congress more than they blame Donald Trump on this. So they're going to be the ones who are going to be held to blame.
But is that fair, Gloria? I mean, Mitch McConnell has been touted as this, I can help get mega legislation through. And I mean, I'm kind of keeping track on what the W's in the win column, and I'm looking at a goose egg.
Right. Look, I think sure, when you have a Congress that had, years and voted, 50 times to repeal and replace, but they knew it was fake, that it wasn't going to go anywhere with a Democratic president, and then they came time to run the country and they couldn't do it, sure, I think they deserve the blame. However, I also think that Donald Trump doesn't get off scot-free here, because he got involved, he tried to cut a deal with his own Republicans, and he couldn't make it happen either. But the polls are showing that it's the members of Congress who are really going to take the biggest share of the blame here.
And Brooke, I can assure you this is not going to be the last effort. It may be the last effort this week, but Republicans are going to come back to this.
So here's the twist or the rub, depending on your perspective, because we also have reporting from Deirdre Walsh and Ashley Killow that President Trump and Mike Rogers, this is for you, having worked many an hour and many a year on Capitol Hill, President Trump told House Republicans who attended a bipartisan meeting on tax reform that if they fail to act on health care, he would work with Democrats. And he specifically cites how he loved the deal he did with, the Senate Minority Leader and the House Minority Leader, according to a source familiar with that discussion. So how is that supposed to sit with your fellow Republicans when he's saying, you don't, play my way, I'm working with Democrats?
Yeah, I mean, it's one leverage point that Trump actually has. He probably not the best way to use it. But if you know that, I mean, he got rave reviews when he crossed the aisle and worked with Democrats to solve a problem. And, you know, you would hope that that would catch on, that, hey, maybe this is a good idea. I can bring the groups together. And so what I think I saw today or last night was that, yes, the big, we're going to repeal this big ugly monster and do something different is probably gone. And they're not going to get a chance to do that. So now they should back up and say, all right, what can we do to interject the free market in here to bring costs down for more people? The biggest problem with the bill across the country is that the middle class was suffering under the rate increases and the deduction increases. So Republicans would do well for themselves, and I don't think all is lost for them if they stop for a moment and take a deep breath and say, all right, let's get back to fixing that problem. If we can fix that problem, I think they can recover here, but they all have to come together to understand that they're going to fix that problem, not the big repeal and replace. That clearly is not going to get enough votes to get through.
We'll watch and wait on that piece of it. Gloria, let me just pivot back to you, moving on to a totally separate topic on this Tuesday, that being this Russia probe and your new reporting on Bob Mueller and where this investigation, who they're going to be questioning next.
Well, my colleague Pamela Brown and I are reporting that they're going, the special counsel is going to start interviewing current and former White House staff as soon as later this week. That could slide into next week, Brooke. But, you know, we've already reported and others have reported that there are about a half a dozen current and former White House staffers they want to talk to find out about the questions regarding potential obstruction, the firing of James Comey, and on and on. And particularly, they have been interested, and we've reported this before, they have been interested in people who were involved in the crafting of that statement aboard Air Force One regarding Don Jr.'s meeting with Russians at the Trump Tower meeting. So they're gonna clearly ask about those things, but now we know that documents have been collected and that the interviews could start very soon.
Mike Rogers, what's your read on that news?
Well, clearly, I think that there's also a financial angle to all of this. If you're going to have a successful special prosecutor investigation into all of this, the financial trail, you know, as a young FBI agent, about the third day in the academy, they tell you, remember, every investigation is never about the money. It's always about the money. And so I think what you're going to find is there's going to be a financial angle in addition to the things that Gloria is reporting on to help bolster that case. But they will really have nothing solid if they don't get that piece of it done. Okay.
Let's move on to North Korea. Listening to the president talking with the Spanish PM, talking about, it seemed to me it was a toned down message from when we heard him speaking in front of the UN General Assembly last week, David, that now the headline out of today was that the president is calling for complete denuclearization of North Korea, not for its total destruction, which is, I believe the words last week were, the threat to totally destroy North Korea, and the implication being not just Kim Jong-un, but all 25 million people. What's your interpretation of that?
Yeah, it was interesting because he, clearly, as he always does, the president wanted everyone to know that if indeed we had to go to a military option, that we're prepared to do so, that the United States can absolutely cause a lot of damage to North Korea. He made that point, but you notice that he also said that really is our second option here. This is not, that is the sort of plan B, he was trying to say, and he was trying to focus more on calling upon Spain, other countries, I just say Spain because he was standing next to him, but calling on the world community to help denuclearize the Korean Peninsula. And that is where the president was clearly sort of putting the emphasis today. You're right, it was a marked difference from last week's speech at the UN.
But the emphasis, too, this is the line I jotted down, Gloria, he kept going back to, this should have been handled years and years ago. He said, various administrations left me a mess, but I'll fix that mess.
Well, he does have a point that, and I'd like to see what Mike Rogers says about this, but this has been an albatross for many, many years, and I guarantee you that when President Obama was talking to him when they had their private session, that he told him this is going to be the #1 issue on your plate, and he was unable to deal with it. The question, of course, is whether Donald Trump has ratcheted up an already bad situation to an even more terrible place than it was, or whether this is going to get solved in one way or another. And I don't think we know the answer to that, but I'm going to agree that what I heard today was a little bit of the rhetoric being kind of toned down here.
It seemed softened, especially as he was being asked about the tweet over the weekend, which North Korea and the foreign minister deemed as a declaration, of war. Mike Rogers, what should Americans make of all of this?
Well, I think Trump is better when he's scripted on national security issues. His speech was pretty toned down. It was pretty pointed. There's two levels here, and I think where a piece gets rubbed off is when Trump adds his special sauce to what the message is to Kim Jong-un.
So what was the special sauce today?
Well, the special sauce is always that, hey, we're going to do this. We have a military option and we will use it. He heightens it up by using pejorative terms and saying we'll destroy all of them. It'll be fire and fury. All of those things are a Trumpism to what I think is a solid strategy of changing Kim Jong-un's calculus of we have a pretty big and competent military. We have the resources. We have the technology. We will use it to take you out, Kim Jong-un. That was kind of a Mattis, to me, fingerprinted event. You saw that happening. That's why you see the bombers going over. That's why you see more naval operations. That's why you see lots of preparations happening around with the U.S. military. The other piece of it, he needs to believe, Kim Jong-un needs to believe that the United States is serious. That's the one calculus that's been around for about 12 years. Bush into Obama, nobody believed that there was a military option. They've changed that calculus. I wish the president would tone down his part of it and start looking for that diplomatic out for Kim Jong-un. I think we could go a long way. I do agree that they had to change and break that paradigm of, listen, there's no military option. Simply not true. They're not very good options, and hope to God they never use them, but they needed Kim Jong-un to understand that. I think they've done that now. Now it's time to start finding ways to get to a diplomatic solution with Kim Jong-un.
Sure. Let's jog back to Gloria and Pamela's reporting on the Russia investigation, and how Gloria and Pamela are reporting that Bob Mueller and the special counsel will be now looking into and questioning both current and former White House staffers. And I wanted to go back, David, just to loop back with you on her point on how they will specifically be looking at that statement drafted aboard Air Force One and in the wake of the news coming out about the Trump Tower meeting. And I'm wondering from you what you make of the fact that Bob Mueller is so focused on the president's role in that particular instance.
Well, I think this goes to the larger potential obstruction of justice case that Mueller is trying to build here, just because of the why the involvement, how the involvement, and were there different stories told? Was there some deception going on about the involvement, and if so, why? So it seems to be part of a larger piece, starting with Comey's firing, that Mueller is going to try to piece together. As we've been reporting, as Gloria and Pamela and others have been reporting about, these interviews were coming. What I think now with the news that they may be here at the end of this week or perhaps the beginning of next week, this is when White Houses really, can start making some mistakes. This is where just people have a hard time as they're under the glare of investigation and doing interviews, also making sure that they're sticking up with their day job. And so watching how the White House as an organization, how John Kelly in his now role of chief of staff, where he's really been able to flex his muscles about the structure and the workflow inside the West Wing, how now when people are sitting down for these interviews and talking to Mueller's team, does Trump react? Does his team react as they try to move on to tax reform and other big agenda items? I think that's a big question mark hanging over this White House right now.
Excellent conversation. We're going to have much more on all of this in just a moment, including more on the president's war with the NFL. I'm Brooke Baldwin. You're watching CNN. Stand by.